Namaskar. Welcome to Prakash on Basics. I'm Prakash Zog. We've been talking of Vivaha Sanskar, that is the marriage Sanskar. The Vivaha Sanskar, the marriage ritual, and the marriage ceremony are not really the same. A fact that many times is overlooked. Sanskar is really associated with the morals, the ethics of marriage, dharma, the behavior norms, ideal behavior norms of marriage. Vidhi is the ritual. It deals with what is technically known as liturgy. What is to be done, how it is to be done, in what sequence it is to be done, and so forth. The performance of the rituals themselves. And the ceremony involves uh, more of a social aspect, a social gathering where there is a lot of interaction, relatives and friends and others. Uh, it is here that many a times the traditions, the customs, etc., take over to a large extent. But truly speaking, all these three areas are intertwined, and it's very difficult to distinguish between them. In my earlier talks, I have tried to separate these out. Today, I'll give a sequential list uh, and fill in the gaps of information as we go along. Um, I've covered some of the aspects in detail, so those naturally I will overlook. Otherwise, that would be just a repetition of things. Let me remind you that based on the works of Mahamahopadhyay, uh, Bharat Ratna Kane, who wrote a very big treatise, History of Dharma Shastra, a compilation of all the information associated with the sutras and other areas. This book was partly translated by, partly reinterpreted by Yashwant Abaji Bhatt, and here he lists out the rituals that are to be carried out in marriages uh, according to the Dharma Shastras or the scriptures. Uh, so naturally, the sequence is as per the Dharma Sutras, the Gruhya Sutras, the Smrutis. Uh, and in majority of places, whether it is North India or South India or East or West, these are still followed as they are. But it's quite obvious that because of local traditions and local norms and the caste system and other issues, there could be regional variations in each of them. Uh, there could be some additions, some omissions. I'll skip all that and I'll come to the original sequence of what has been originally proposed. Uh, there are some rituals that are included in different regions. Secondly, all these words, the original sequence of words are in Sanskrit. If you're aware of either Hindi or partly of Sanskrit or other regional languages, understanding these words is not going to be very difficult. But I will specify the meaning of each of these terms as we go along. This will also help us to understand as to why Indian marriages many a times extend to more than 2 days, 3 days, and in olden days around 8 days, and sometimes even more than that. Uh, so let's begin. Let me give you the individual sequence of lists and then look into how we can interpret them. I must remind you of one more thing. Many of these things that I talk of could be s- samantrak or amantrak. That means they are to be performed with Vedic mantras being chanted, or there are some that need not have the mantras along with them, only more a part of a ritual or the way in which they are worked out. The first two, in fact, are things that we discussed some time back, just last time. Um, Vadhu Var Guna Pariksha and Var Preshana. The two of testing or checking the qualities of the groom and the bride, and uh, ensuring the search for a good, suitable groom or a bride are the two steps. How long this would take is something that is very unpredictable. So we cannot put a time frame along with this. But once that part is finished, then there has to be a formal commitment to marriage. Nowadays, the word used for it is mm, engagement. Uh, Many times it is talked of as ring ceremony, but the original word is Vagdan. Vag is word, Dan is giving. So what it really means is giving your word that yes, this marriage, this alliance will go through. It's a verbal commitment of the relation that is being established or the marriage that is going to be performed. Um, this is usually a pre-marriage ceremony. Ideally, it was to take place just prior to the marriage. But nowadays, there could be a very large amount of time gap between the two of them also. Now, the next step is known as Mandapakaran. It, this is setting up the pendal for the marriage function itself. It is usually outside the bride's home. The reason is pretty simple. Marriage is not to be, the rituals are not to be performed within your house, because it's going to be a big social gathering with a lot of people around, and so there has to be a separate venue for it, which is usually closest to the bride's house, so usually outside the house of the girl. Now, and setting up this pendal is the logical step that is involved. The next step is known as Nandi Shraddha and Punyaha Vachan. For any auspicious ceremony that takes place at home, it is essential that your ancestors, your previous generations, should be invoked and their blessings must be uh, sought after. And for this, the specific part of remembering them is known as Nandi Shraddha. This is an auspicious part. It is performed at death ceremonies also and yearly afterwards. That's a separate one. This is the one that is associated with all good occasions that take place in your house. And Punyahavachan is a recitation of holy verses in order to purify and remove all evil effects, not only of the place but of people and other areas around where the function is going to take place. The next step is known as Vadhu Gruhagamana. That means arriving at the house of the bride. Usually, this used to be a different town, a different place. So there used to be a big marriage party that used to this in Hindi. It is typically referred to as Bharat, which is taken from there, the house of the groom, to the house of the bride, which could be a different town or a different place altogether. Uh, so this was a major aspect itself. Uh, they would come, and as soon as they arrived at the boundary of the village or the town, they had to be welcomed. And this ceremony is known as Simanta Pujan. Sima is the border, and Pujan is praying or respecting them. And this Simanta Pujan of the bride, of the groom and his party, by the bride and her party, not the bride herself, but her parents and others. This was accompanied by one more step, which is known as Madhuparka. So it is the welcome at the boundary and offering Madhuparka. Madhuparka is ideally a mixture of curds and honey, which is extremely nutritious for anybody. If they are not immediately available, sugar could be used instead uh, of curds. You could use ghee. Or but since this started getting too much of a alternative, people started mixing all of them together as one of the most nutritious things that could be offered to any senior, venerable guest who arrives at your place. And this included the priest who is to conduct the yajnas, or the king, or your father-in-law, or your uncle, or your son-in-law. So all these are revered people to whom Madhaparka is given. So when the groom reaches the boundary, he is given Madhuparka. He is offered a good seating place. His feet are washed, cleansed. Essences are sprinkled on him. He is made comfortable and then guided into the village or the town or the location where the marriage is to take place. But this whole group then, in some places they used to stay in the corresponding temple in the village or some other place, but not in the actual pandal itself. The method of uh, this respect is nowadays many a times restricted in marriages, but originally it was meant for all revered people. uh, Even today, in most of the Indian houses, you can't really enter into a house with shoes, and you cannot enter without washing your feet. So previously, there used to be a special place to wash your feet yourself, of course, and then get into a person's house. Nowadays, of course, things are gradually changing over. Good or bad is for us to decide. Um, the next step is associated more with the the bride's side. This deals with about four aspects. This is Snapan, Paridhapan, Sannahan, and Indrani Pujan. These are the original words. What they mean really is that the bride girl is to be bathed with not only uh, pleasant water, but food grains are to be sprinkled on her head, uh, essences are to be applied. She is to be decked with new clothes, and a special cord is to be tied around her waist to ward off all evil effects that can harm the bride. Uh, the aspect of Indrani Pujan is equally important, which is not practiced in that sense nowadays. Uh, Indra's wife is Indrani, and she represents the fertile land. So, all the ladies of the house would treat this girl who is going to go to another family and become a fertile land for them, give rise to their progeny, and extend their family. And for her to do her best, she, in the form of Indrani, is to be worshipped. That was the feeling behind all this. Uh, After Indrani Pujan, there is a ritual known as Samanjan. This, in fact, is many times linked to the same process. It is specified separately because in India, on all auspicious occasions, special pigments and pastes like sandalwood paste and other essences are to be applied to the body, and then you have your bath. All nutritious oils and others are rubbed into your skin, and so that uh, and then having a bath with hot water is what is usually carried out. So Samanjan here implies applying all these essential oils and pigments and fragrances to the body of not only the bride but also the groom at his place naturally. Mm. They are anointed and given a suitable bath. Along with this, again, there is another ceremony that is nowadays talked of. Uh, if it is Hindi, it is called as haldi. and it's carried out in north and south and east and west everywhere. And that actually is uh, applying turmeric paste to the body of the girl or the bride, and whatever is remaining is to be transferred and passed on to the boy's side, to his residence, to be applied to him on his body, face, hands, legs, and so forth. um, Reason behind this was dual. Turmeric is a disinfectant. So they are supposed to remain free of all diseases during this span. And once you apply this pigment to your hands and legs, the color doesn't come off very easily. So the face looks uh, yellowish, hands look yellowish, and so identifying the bride and the groom anywhere in the group, or whether they have been just married, and identifying them is also becomes very easy. So you will in fact realize that they still many a times have that yellowish tinge of haldi on their faces even a day or two after their marriages. um, there is another ritual that comes after this, which is known as parisara bandha. Parisar is the surrounding area and bandha is binding. So, binding the surroundings with a protective armor in the form of a thread, which has been an enchanted thread that is tied around uh, her wrist, is what this Parisar Bandha is. A protective mechanism from evil is what is done. A charmed protective thread is tied to her wrist. After all this, if it's the marriage day, they are both expected to reach the marriage pandal, and this is known as Vadhu Var Sannishkramana. That means going to the pandal from their place of residence immediately on that particular marriage day. Usually, since it is very close to the bride's place, she would reach immediately, and then she is expected to carry out one more part, which is known as Gauri Har Pujan. Gauri is goddess Parvati, and Har is her consort, great Lord Shiva. Shiva and Parvati are supposed to be among the most ideal couples, along with Vishnu and Lakshmi. So Gauri Hara and Vishnu and Lakshmi are the, and it is it is believed that it was Shiva who visited Gauri when she was there, and she was praying for his arrival. So in this way, the girl is supposed to sit in in the pandal uh, and pray in front of a gold idol of Gauri and Hara, or drawings drawn on a surface of Gauri and Hara or Shiva. And she is to pray for the well being and betterment of her spouse, which is the husband who's coming along for the marriage. Uh, Many a times nowadays, she also prays to a silver idol of a goddess who's supposed to take care of all food at all places, which is known as Annapurna. Anna is food, Purna is completion. So the goddess which who takes care of all the food that this girl is to provide for her family after reaching there is possible only if the goddess is in favor. And so she has to pray to this goddess also. So that also comes along. Once both of them are there, there is a couple of ceremonies that take place which involve Ardrakshata Ropan. That means wet rice is sprinkled on them, and Kankana Bandhan, which is tying a piece of turmeric to the wrist of the two of them, is carried out, him to her and her to him, a part and parcel of their interactions beginning at that time. This is followed by one of the parts which is treated to be the most important in all Indian marriages that you see, and this is the technical name for this is Paraspar Samikshana. What it means is seeing each other. Ideally, the marriages is to be decided by somebody else, and the parents and others, and the bride and the groom is to really come face to face in the pandal at this time. But they were not to be brought directly in front of each other. So there used to be a cloth held in between. And uh, as is customary, when you see somebody very dear to you, what all that you do is to put a garland around his neck. And so, in Maharashtra, this is typically referred to as antarpat. Antar is separation. Part is the partition that is available, and so there is a cloth partition that is put between the two of them. Uh, and once the and eight mantras known as the Mangalashtaka are invoking the local deities and other gods are pronounced by the two presiding priests as well as close family members. And once this is removed, they are supposed to garland each other. So this in North India is typically referred to as Jaimala. So all that finally comes down to this Paraspar Samikshana that I am talking of. Um, the auspicious time many a times is associated or linked to this time where the Jaimala is put. But that's not really as it is mentioned in the original scriptures. The the reference to Paraspara is there only in the Ashwalayan Gruhya Sutra, one of the specific texts which gives details of many of the rituals. Um, there is one more ritual associated with this immediately afterwards, and that is known as Shikha Mochan. Shikha is the tail, and mochan is removal. So, usually, slightly prior to this, when the girl is at her father's place and is moving around, her hair is tied, and it is expected that it is also tied with the help of a woolen thread. Releasing this woolen thread is what Shikha Mochan is. This is supposed to be a bond of, of the god Varuna, which holds the girl to her parents' place. It is believed that before marriage, the girl is under the protection of Agni, the fire, Vishwavasu, one of the demigods, uh, and Varuna. And these are controlling her stay in her parents' house. It is now time for them to release her, to let her go to her own house. And that bond that is holding her is this thread. So, this woolen thread from her hair is removed and she is now free to get married and stay with the groom which has been decided. After this comes the six or seven rituals that I talked of in our previous encounters, and they really represent the actual marriage ceremony as such and the sanskar as such. More of a sanskar than the ceremony, also a vidhi, that is the ritual involved, and that is the kanyadan, giving away the daughter, Agni Sthapana and Home, the fire that we talked of, Pani Grahan, that is taking over the hands of the girl, Laja Home, the sacrifices made in the fire, Agni Parinayan, that is going encircling the fire, Ashmarohan, rising on the rock, and Saptapadi, the seven major steps, which is the crux of Hindu marriage. Those I have discussed in detail, so let me not go into those again. But I've just reminded you that that is what comes here. I have discussed them in details. After this, there is supposed to be what is known as Murdhabhishek. That means the bride and the groom are sprinkled with enchanted uh, protective sprinkling of water, special water that is prepared to bless them and to protect them from every evil. Uh, Charmed water, as you could say. The groom is then supposed to take the girl and show her, expose her to the sun, point out the sun to her, and tell her that you are supposed to be like her. and may the sun god protect the two of us. That's the part of the ritual that deals with exposure to the sun. He is then supposed to carry out what is known as Rudaya Sparsha. So, as told by the priest, he utters certain special mantras and touches the heart of the girl, indicating that all her possessions and she herself is now a part of him, and that they are to be together throughout by heart. Mm, Technically, with the previous ones I talked of, at this stage you are practically end of the basic ceremony. Now, there are a lot of guests and others around who are not may not be aware of what really is happening. So, the next step is known as Prekshakanumantrana. That means some senior person or an authoritative person from either of the two sides or from both sides tells all the gathering about the marriage and the dealings that have gone about. And so this is an informative session of a small amount that is carried out. It is supposed to have been carried out. Uh, Once this is over, technically the priests have completed their job. So the next step is dakshina dana, that is offering remuneration to the presiding priest from the both parties. And that will be according to the customs, the rituals, whatever has been decided, and so forth. But what do the scriptures say? The Gruhya Sutras, in fact, the Gobhil Gruhya Sutra says that the priest is to be given one cow as his remuneration for having presided over the marriage. So you'll find that in many Indian rituals, if you're just careful to watch, you will see that by this time the priest will pull out a small metal cow from his pocket and put it or from his bag and put it in front and ask him to pour water on it and say that yes, I have donated this to you, and then corresponding amount is transferred, because actual bringing a cow nowadays is not going to be very convenient. So that is also a part of the ritual that is carried out, but the meaning is one gift of perpetual growth is to be given to the priest who has conducted the marriage. And that is the ritual. Um, Corresponding to that particular day or evening or night, the groom is supposed to show Dhruva, the pole star, and Arundhati Nakshatra, or the constellation and the star, to the girl. This is to ensure that she realizes that she has to be steadfast as Dhruva, the pole star. And that basically terminates the major part that is conducted usually on that particular day. Um, Now comes the separation. The groom, along with the daughter, has to part and go to his own house. And there are a couple of rituals that are carried out there also. And first of them is Gruha Pravesh, that is entering into the house. Many a time this is carried out by placing a pot full of grain on the doorstep, and she is to kick it inside. It is supposed to signify that she would be, and the family would become so rich with her arrival that there would be grain scattered around anywhere which could go under your feet also, and nobody would bother to even pick it up. So it implies wealth. Home that is burning an auspicious fire is an essential part everywhere. So as soon as they arrive home, there is supposed to be a home that is performed. And this is there has to be a sthali pak. That means cooked food is to be oblated or put into the flames as an offering to the gods. This is also accompanied by two more rituals that are talked of, and one is Lakshmi Pujana. The girl now is supposed to be representative of Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth, who has stepped into your house. So she is to be treated as Lakshmi, and she is to be preyed on by all the others, uh, expecting her to bless the house and the family that she has now joined. There are sometimes chances that the name of the girl might be changed in accordance with the name of the boy. So if the boy has a particular name named after a particular god, his corresponding consort's name would be given to the girl. Nowadays, of course, boys and girls usually don't change their names. In fact, I remember my daughter's maiden name still remains the same even on our passports after about 15-20 years. So the things have changed, but there in olden days, ideally a complimentary name was given according to the groom to the girl also. 3 days after their marriage, there is a special, or rather for 3 days, there is a special way in which they are supposed to conduct their lives. And this behavior pattern is referred to as Triratra Vrata. Three is three, Ratra is night. So 3 nights they have to rather after up to finishing 3 nights, they have to have special behavior norms, and they have to remain under strict norms for these 3 days. And there is another ritual known as the Chaturthi Karma. Chaturthi is fourth. So special performances for the fourth day after their marriage. Uh, this is also a part of the ritual that is carried out. Nowadays, of course, it is usually not followed, but originally it was predicted and expected to be carried out. So after these 4 days, they are then free to remain as husband and wife in the new family in which they have joined over. So now that all the processes are over, safe and sound, there are two responsibilities that are left. The first is making an identification of the girl itself. Many a times, this is not treated as a separate ritual because this has been added maybe around 1000 AD sometime, and is nowadays practiced everywhere. Only one or two Gruvya Sutras of the later period mention this. This is known as Mangala Sutra Bandhan. Uh, and this is this is tying an auspicious thread originally, but now a suitable gold ornament is tied around the bride's neck, uh, which identifies her to be a married woman. And this is no, as I said, this is a late introduction because of traditions that have come up across much later. It was talked of in the Shaunak Smriti in a much later period. Very early ones do not mention of this. Does that end everything? No. There is a step that is left, and this is known as Devaka Thapana, and that is uh, Utthapan is to take up and remove. Devak is the deity's presence. So when the marriage starts off, along with Punyavachan and the initial prayers, gods have been invoked to stay in the house and protect and shield all the area that is around. They have done their job. So it is now time to request them to please go home and do your other duties and help others. So asking them to leave is Devako Thapan. And once all that is over, the pandal that had been constructed has to be removed. So Mandapodhvasan, that is removal of the pandal, is the next step. Now the pandal is to be actually at both places till the boy comes back here. So actually the timing of Devakothapan and Pandapodhvasan for the girl's side is immediately after these people have left. But these people might take 2-3 days to reach their place. And so these two would be at two different times. So this then culminates the complete sanskar of how marriages are supposed to take place. As you can see, all this is not going to finish off overnight. So it could take, the whole process could take 8 or 10 days, and there could be some additional parts that are added on due to new cultures nowadays, singing and dancing that carries on in the marriages at the time when mehendi is applied to the henna is applied to the hands of the girl, and when other rituals are being performed, and the previous day's functions and so forth. So it has now become more of a marriage ceremony that goes ahead, but the original sequence of what must be conducted is what I have told you from the various Gruhya Sutras and Dharma Sutras and the Smritis. If you have liked whatever I have said, please like and subscribe to this channel. Tell your friends about all this. When you attend any marriage, whether it is in North India or South India, in South India, of course, rather than the Mangal Sutra being tied, you would see that the bride is given a diamond to put around as a nose ring and so forth. So there are different customs. See how the customs vary at two ends. How Rajasthani marriage is carried out, and how Maharashtrian marriages are carried out, and how South Indian marriages take place, and so, and how, what are the similarities and the differences. So next time you attend a marriage, see if all this takes place or not. Enjoy the marriage. I'm sure you have enjoyed whatever I have talked of. We need to talk of so many more things. We'll need meet for them 15 days from the year now again. Uh, till then, namaskar.